Welcome, my name is Nick Maurer. I am a personal trainer here at Exertion Fitness, and I'm also a health coach and personal training coach with Core Perform Light. Today, we're here to talk about how to track macros. So first, our learning objectives. So we're going to learn about what a macro is, how they are used, why each one is important, and how to apply this towards yourself and what you're trying to do for your unique goals. So first off, what is a macro? So macros are made up of protein, carbs, and fats. All together combined creates your full day's worth of calories. So the fourth macro that we need to make sure we account for is alcohol. So protein is 4 calories per gram, carbs are 4 calories per gram, fat is 9 calories per gram, and alcohol, whenever it's tracked, is either tracked as carbs or as fat, and it's 7 calories per 1 gram of pure alcohol. So once you know how many grams you have of each individual macro in a day, you multiply by that number, and you get your total daily calories. So let's go ahead and start off. Let's figure out how each macro is tracked. So with carbohydrates, so it's 4 calories per gram. Carbs are also important for brain function, high endurance activities, and much, much more. So carbs are our body's preferred energy source. So whenever we eat carbs, our body can do one or two things with it. Either it stores it in the liver as glycogen, which is basically stored up energy, or it stores it as adipose tissue, which is fat. So that's why some people think, oh, if I eat too many carbs, I get fat. Well, if you eat too many of any macro, it can become fat because our bodies can only use so much of it. So with fats, it's an energy source that is 9 calories per gram, and our body's second energy form. It's used mainly with lower intensity exercises. So when you are doing, walks, or if you're doing, maybe it's like a walk first thing in the morning, our bodies will actually use our fat as our preferred energy source because it's lower impact, and it's not going to really tap into the glycogen stores all that much. And then protein is 4 calories per gram as well. It's used primarily to build muscle and burn fat. So whenever we eat protein is important not only for our skeletal muscles and our muscles in general, but it's good for brain function as well. And you got to think about this too. The more muscle you have, the better ability you have to have a faster metabolic rate. So that means you're burning more calories at rest. And protein is a big, big component of that. Also, protein is definitely one of the more satiating, more filling macros anyways. Whenever you have alcohol, it's 7 calories per gram. So whenever you are out drinking, a lot of times you know the alcohol content of your drink. Whenever you go to track it, you just put it in as a carb or a fat, and I'll be able to talk about that a little bit further down. When if you're tracking it as a carb, basically you're taking the total amount of calories in that drink and dividing it by 4. Or if you're tracking as fat, you take the total calories of that drink and divide it by 9. So let's go ahead and break down why each macro is important and what its role is as far as getting you your results. So protein is an important building block of bones, muscles, cartilage. It's basically what I said before. So it's used mainly to repair the muscles. So when we're working out, we're creating small micro tears in our muscles and making it to where we need to repair it. So protein plays the biggest role in repairing it, and it also plays the biggest role in what's called in your anabolic processes. So that basically means you're growing and rebuilding that muscle. And also, like I said before, it definitely aids in digestion too. So whenever we start a meal and we're eating protein first, it actually starts it's harder to break down, so the lactic acid in our stomachs actually have to kick in a little bit harder, so it's actually starting to break things down a little bit faster and more efficient. So whenever you are eating a meal, it's actually really important for digestion if you start with your protein first and then eat your carbs and fats and veggies, just for the fact that that protein is what really kicks on the lactic or the stomach acid from getting going. Also can help basically curb your appetite because it is more filling. So you can eat basically less of it, get more protein in your diet, help you build more muscles, and eat less. So it's kind of like the king macronutrient. So fat. Fat is primarily what helps give our body energy and our cells growth. And also the main thing with fat is it's huge for our hormonal health and our endocrine system. So without sufficient levels of fat, so that's why whenever you see people with like really, really low body fat, a lot of times they have a hormonal dysregulation just for the fact that they don't have the processes in the body to help facilitate. So basically, fat in the different types of fats all play a role in our endocrine system through the four main different types of fats. You have saturated fats, which is butter, cheese, and bacon. You have trans fats, which is kind of like the really good tasting, like the donuts and pizza and cookies. You have monounsaturated fats, which is olive and peanut and sunflower oils. And then we have like polyunsaturated fats, which is walnuts, pumpkin seeds, and flax seeds are some examples. So carbs, how are they used? So carbs are our body's preferred energy source. So our bodies will take, like we said before, our bodies will take carbs, they'll break them down, and they'll go one of two ways. They'll either go they'll go to the liver, or they'll be stored as glycogen, and it'll be used for energy later on throughout the day, or the next morning, or whatever. And it's really meant for super high intense exercise, whether that's in the gym training real hard, or if that's like a sporting event, or any kind of like high intensity interval training, or it's stored as fat. So once our bodies, so there's a real tie between how sensitive we are to carbs and how they're stored in our body. So, and we'll talk about that at another time. So right here is kind of a macro cheat sheet. So you have proteins, carbs, and fats here. Some examples of lean protein that has a full amino profile are animal meats like chicken, turkey, and ground beef. Some carbs examples that are full complex carbs would be like sweet potato, potatoes, basmati, jasmine, white rice, brown rice. And then fat, great sources of fat would be avocado, butter, and olive oil. And then there's some that are in the middle. So sometimes some carbs and some proteins and some fats can all be kind of used in different categories. For example, if you're like a vegan and you don't eat meat, there are proteins that are still found in some carbs, such as like beans and quinoa, and like in peas, there's pea protein and all that. So there is a way to still get it. It just doesn't have the full amino acid profile that a regular protein does, but that's getting a little too deep on that. So I want to go into how, like a little case study of how I learned to count macros, what I was before, what I did to get to where it helped me lose weight, and how I set it all up. So here on the left, we have a picture of me. I was 220 pounds. This was about 5 years ago. I decided to do a dirty bulk where I just like ate everything, I just went like I was never hungry. I always ate, and it wasn't all the right stuff. So I was eating like ice cream every night, popcorn, just tons of food. I really wasn't tracking anything. I just thought, oh, the big guys do it. I want to get big, so I'm going to continue to eat like this. So obviously that didn't work out. If you can really see close, I gained a lot of fat in my midsection, in my face, and it was not any muscle at all gained. It was pretty much just all fat. So once I got on and started learning about macros and how to track them, I downloaded what's called my MyFitnessPal app, and that is where I sat there and I tracked every single thing I ate. And so what I was able to do is whenever I tracked everything I ate, I saw, okay, my daily calories were about 3,000 calories, and that was allowing me to still stay at 220 pounds. Well, obviously I wanted to lose weight. So whenever you want to lose weight, you got to go in a caloric deficit. So if I'm at 3,000 here and I want to lose weight, I got to be somewhere down here to kind of kickstart that. But it's also hard to figure out, where or how low you need to go from that. So what I always recommend doing if you're starting off, so for me, I was at 3,000 calories. So I do about a 15 to 20% deficit rule. So for me, 20% was about 600 calories. I did 2,500, or I did 500 calorie deficit. So I started at 2,500. So with me having 3,000 to start off with, I dropped myself to 2,500 per day. And out of those 2,500 calories in a day, 250 grams came from protein, 188 grams came from carbs, and 83 grams came from fat. So over the course of 90 days, I increased my cardio just slightly, but pretty much everything else stayed the same. I just stayed in that slight caloric deficit and made sure I stayed strict to it. I didn't go over any days. I stayed right at that 2,500 every day, if not a little bit lower. And then within that, I went from 220 down to 190 in about 90 days. So it doesn't always happen that quickly, and it doesn't always work as well as you think. That's why having a coach like me and other people, we're able to kind of take the thought process out of you trying to figure it out yourself, and we kind of help aid you and teach you along the way of how it all works, instead of you just looking at this or just downloading an app and seeing what the calculator says. So that is kind of how I did it, and that may be as easy as what you need to do, or maybe a little bit harder. But always reach out to me if you can figure out how to do that. So I want to take the opposite approach now. So how I set myself up for a growing phase. So here on the left, I was 192 pounds. This was back in August of 2021. And here's a current picture of me from last week, the first week of November, and I'm now 200 pounds. So over the last 90 days, I've gained 8 pounds. And so the way I set that up was, during that time, I was able to look like this at 3,200 calories. And I was pretty much staying stagnant at maintenance calories around that deal. So I was like, well, I need to gain, but I didn't want to gain as much fat as quickly. So the way to do that is you got to set yourself for a long growing period, because the longer it takes, the less fat you're going to be growing along the way, and the more muscle it's going to actually be used for, or more muscle you're going to be able to add on instead of just adding fat. So in this case, I was starting at 3,200 calories, and what I did was I bumped myself first to 3,500 calories. So I only did a 300 calorie bump. That allowed me to basically slowly grow from 192 to about 195, 196 in the first 6 to 8 weeks. It is like a slow gain. I didn't really gain a whole lot of excess fat throughout that, and I figured I was in a really good spot. So I stayed stagnant for about 2 weeks, got my coach. We said we're ready to go ahead and bump it to 3,700. So then I got the 3,700 calories, and it took me about a month more from there. And I went from 196 up to 200, and that's where I currently stand right there. So there's not a humongous difference. All you can really see is I had a little more striations here, not so much there, but you can tell that I'm more full, and I'm able to, I'm at a spot where I'm gaining muscle and I'm gaining strength like crazy. And it's another important note too, before I go even further, it's a more important note that when you're trying to grow, not only does it take time, but you have to be uncomfortable with getting a look like you will gain some fat. Clothes might not fit the same way you were like they fit before, but you have to remember that in order to gain muscle, you have to be in a caloric surplus to be able to do that. So you can't sit there and get all bent out of shape. If you gain 5 to 10 pounds over the next 4 to 5 months, it's normal. It's what needs to be done. Because once we get down and do a deficit again, in another 6 months or a year, you'll notice that you're fuller and have more muscle than you did before, and that's because we were in a caloric surplus. So the way I set that up as far as my macros go, my macros out of that 3,700 calories was 230 grams of protein, 370 grams of carbs, and 144 grams of fat per day. And so basically I stayed on that. I work out 3 to 4 days a week and been able to slowly gain. So I wanted to go ahead and I talked about what a macro is, how they all work, what the importance of them are. So now I kind of want to break down how to get started in MyFitnessPal, which is my preferred app for tracking macros. So first, whenever you open it up, it has a spot where you put in your goals. So it'll ask you what your starting weight is, your current weight, goal weight, weekly goal, that sort of deal, and how active you are on a daily basis. So this is where it's kind of important to work with a coach, because an app like MyFitnessPal or any macro tracking app is all based around kind of calculations, and it has nothing to do with your unique body. So every single person will lose and gain weight totally different than the next person. We are 7 billion unicorns out there, and we can't just take a formula and just copy and paste it to ourselves and expect it to work. Everyone's different. So a lot of the times, you may get lucky on your first try, or it might take you 10 tries. But that's, once again, why I say having an integrative coach like myself who looks at more than just what the diet is and exercise is, and looks at other lifestyle factors about how often you can work out, what kind of workouts those should be, how stressed you are, all that kind of stuff all plays into getting your results. It's not just eat this, work out here, boom, results. There's a lot of in-between things that we just don't look at, especially just using the calculator. So back to the MyFitnessPal tracker. So for me, whenever I did it, I knew that my calories needed to be about 3,400 because I had been tracking for about a week prior, which I always recommend starting with at least a week, tracking all your food and figure out what it is you're eating day by day that's keeping you at the same weight you are right now. And then you can know if you need to go up or down based on your goals. So for me, I started at 3,400, and so what it does at that point is it's all calculated. So me and my coach, we figured out that I need to do about 35% of my calories need to be carbs, 40% need to be protein at the time, and 25% need to be fat. So basically what I did was, you do the 40, like you do the percentages, and it kicks out how many grams per day that is. So for me, for example, 3,400 calories, 297 grams of carbs, 340 grams of protein, and 95 grams of fat is what it comes out to. And so that's kind of how the first part gets started. So as far as like how to enter the data goes, so what you have right here, so like for breakfast, you'll just type in, like for me, I put eggs, and then right here, you can change how many eggs, it pops up, you hit add, you go to the next page, and then you're able to type in, or you go back to it, you're able to go back to the search bar, type in the next thing you ate, and then add it. And so right along here, you're actually able to manipulate how many, so like for example, that one that was just on the screen was turkey bacon. So everyone had turkey bacon. If I type in, Oscar Mayer turkey bacon, it'll automatically pop up all the macros that are on there, and then it'll say how many servings. So a serving size on turkey bacon is 1 piece. So if I have 2 pieces, I go down and I change that to 2 servings, and then that automatically calculates my macros. Sorry about that, light turned off. So after that, you're able to add the food, then you go on to the next one, you go back to the search bar, type in the food you want, the quantities, and so on and so forth. So when it comes down to meat, so if you are cooking at home and you have, say you buy a pound of ground beef and you want to make that into 3 different meals. So a pound is 16 ounces, okay? So you'll cook it up, and after you get done cooking it, the weight of it is probably only about 12 ounces. Start at 16, you cook it down, it's about 12 ounces left. So in order to make 3 meals out of that, you divide it evenly 3 ways. So if it's 12 ounces cooked, that would be 4 ounces cooked per meal. When you are putting that into MyFitnessPal though, you need to put that as more of 5.5 ounces per each, because these values that you're typing into MyFitnessPal are all based on raw weight, so it's not based on cooked weight. So in a sense, if you're putting more calories in as cooked, you're actually eating more calories than what is actually on your plan. So if you're used to eating 8 ounces cooked, it's more like 10 or 11 ounces cooked, or non-cooked. So make sure you make that distinction when you're putting things into MyFitnessPal. So lastly, I wanted to talk about how to eat out and track your food. So most restaurants, you're able to get at least one thing of protein and some sort of like side salad or like a baked potato or something. So what I always recommend is find some on the menu that has a decent portion size of protein, whether it's steak, chicken, beef, salmon, whatever the case is. And so then build it around that. So at that point, and so if you have like salmon or ground beef or whatever, you're able to then ask for a side salad to get your vegetables, and then also you can refer back to the macro example sheet for a carb that can be paired with it. A lot of places have potatoes, they have sweet potatoes, they have beans, they have all kinds of different healthier option carbs to pair with that. And so one of the main reasons why macros are important is it makes you think about what is on your plate as far as the carbs, protein, and fats. And what it is basically balancing your meal out. So the reason why a lot of us will have cravings of some sort during the day is because we're not eating a balanced diet. So a lot of times our diets are really high in carbs or fats, leaving us still wanting more. And a lot of people are not eating enough protein. So if you are sitting down or even out trying to track, if you make sure your food is balanced between the carbs, fats, and proteins, I can almost guarantee you will not have the cravings that like you have like for sweets and all that stuff, because your body is getting nourishment that it needs from all 3 categories. So when we're tracking it, you pick the protein source that you want, whether it's beef, chicken, or fish, whatever the case is. Pick a veggie, a complex carb, and then lastly, just don't overcomplicate it. So a lot of times I find myself eating out with clients. There's time that it's not going to be perfect. Whether you could end up having a soup of some sort, and if it's not on there, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Do your best. A lot of times people still put in their recipes of certain soups they've had. If you want to, you can do that. Or you can just try not to have a big portion of that food you're eating. So sometimes, people get these big portion sizes and they can't track it, and they're like, well, I gotta eat it all. Well, don't eat it all. If that's the case, just eat just until you're satisfied and just be done. Don't continue to eat past that point. And I can guarantee you'll still be on track to get and reach your goals. Any questions?